Let me try to find the information.
Yeah, it's Kolento.
Kolento, exactly. Yeah, that's about it.
Yep. Double elimination, group stages, and then 2 players from each of these groups will be advancing to the top 8 tomorrow, which is going to
reveal also the champion for the next bracket. That means one of those guys will already say bye-bye to the tournament after the next match. Actually leave for toilet during the game because he just couldn't handle it. It was super funny. And everyone was dead at 5 a.m. Alright, let's take a look at Kolento's decks right now. I clicked into it and it opened it to his Twitter. No, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. So he's playing a Prince Kalesev Warlock, and we're going into the game. Okay, let's focus on those decks actually are being picked right
Hooray!
now. So Kolento is starting with his Rogue, which is to no surprise running a Prince Kalesev and pretty standard cards. Otherwise, well, actually not that standard. We have seen 2 Ardent Commanders in his list and 2 Stormwatchers. So that's a little bit more of the unusual side.
Okay, so he's running Corpse Takers too then, I assume?
Yes, that is correct. 2 Corpse Takers as well. Of course, obviously they make sense with the synergy. For Mitsuhide, the deck that he's running, the Warlock, to no surprise, is running a Prince Kalesev as well.
Yeah, if you're running any form of aggressive tempo style deck nowadays, you're running Kalesev unless it's Secret Mage. That's really the only one that I can think of that doesn't have it. Even Pirate Warrior is running Kalesev nowadays. Paladin as well. Can't even throw it in there.
Alright, so the beginning of the game, Kolento with turn 2. The one backstab that he has in his hand is actually very valuable, but it changes its value pretty fast when a Prince Kalesev is gonna get played. Fortunately for him, he knows that there's no Prince Kalesev on turn 2, so he can still keep that backstab for more crucial moments. What I meant with the fact that it's more valuable before the Prince Kalesev is being played, because it just kills 2 HP minions, like an example of Flame Imp. While after the Kalesev is being played, all of those minions are out of the range of a, just backstab being played on something.
Yeah, it makes the trades much more difficult, right? A lot less straightforward. And Rogue is the ideal deck for Prince Kalesev, I believe, but Warlock's strength lies in the fact that its late game is incredibly explosive. So if Mitsu is able to get on board in the early, really get nice value out of the demon synergy that he has going with the Crystal Weavers and the Blood Fury potions, he can keep Kolento's board at bay, keep him from finding nice value with Bone Mare or with Shadow Step, and keep his own life total relatively high. Then you have your own Bone Mares. Then you have Blood Reaver Gul'dan at the top end for that really, really solid finisher. So both of these decks want to do sort of the same thing. It's just a matter of who can get on board first and who can execute that plan better. And with the Kalesev draw from Kolento, it's starting to look like he is going to have a little bit of an edge, at least with the draws going forward.
That is true, but at the same time, I'm kind of thinking, should he actually restrain from playing Kalesev this turn? The difference is that he can play the Pirate alongside it and have a Patches 2/2 out of the deck already that can kill one of the minions from Mitsuhide this turn. So that's a big swing, right, what he can do. And he also knows that most likely there will be no board clear from Mitsuhide at any given point of the game, so having an 1 HP minion on the board is not really a problem. Like the Patches, right? Because he will still eat one trade after he kills, an example, the Flame Elemental. But my point was, if he restrains from playing the Kalesev, then he can get a Shadow Step at some point and get a double value. But at the same time, he restrains from having a possible upgrade on the stats for the first following draw.
Yeah, you sacrifice a couple of your immediate draws for additional value later on. That's if Kolento were to pick up the Shadow Step, so I don't think he wants to go with that game plan just because it's not a sure thing. If he could ensure that he would pick up Shadow Step very quickly, then Tark Reaper this turn would have been excellent as well. But also, this way Kolento takes the immediate board control, cuts down on what Mitsuhide has to work with, and now just looking at Mitsu's hand, The two Crystal Weavers operate very well if you have Void Walkers down or Malkazar's Imps. By themselves, pretty underwhelming when you're looking at a rogue deck. Gonna have to go with Saronite Chain Gang, and Kolento will now be able to likely spiral this board control and just keep compounding the pressure, keep building upon it with the Bone Mare, with the Argent Commander for value trades. If he can keep this lead, he will be able to spiral it out of his control.
Yep. A single Bonemer can just twist this game around, and that's the crucial moment for Kolento. So keeping that coin is probably what's going to happen in the upcoming turns, and the Tower Creeper is actually incredible to maintain the board control this turn, especially since the Cold Blood is able to help out with the tempo trade on the upcoming turn from Kolento. And he still has that upside of playing Kaliseft in the previous turns. So every single draw that he will now have will be potentially more powerful than what Mitsuhide has. Mitsuhide, on the other hand, has access to the Despicable Dreadlord, which can help with wider boards, which is fantastic, because now knows he will be facing a wider array of minions, so that one damage might be really crucial. But at the same time, he is sacrificing tempo with his life tap instead of having an access to additional damage that can be used with trades, which is the engine for this matchup. Kolento has, in my opinion, a huge advantage in the fact that he has a weapon available each turn that can be trading up every single turn, and the health doesn't really matter unless you die. So Kolento is on an advantage just by having that hero power.
And the Vile Spine pickup off the top is huge. Swashbuckler, coin, Vile Spine here to take out the Doom Guard, now with a 4/5 Vile Spine on board. That'll challenge minions from Mitsuhide significantly better than the 3/4 would. And now things are looking even worse for Mitsuhide to come back from this one. The Zoo has really phenomenal late game in the form of Blood Reaver Gul'dan, but you need to actually be able to get there and not be dead. And Rogue is going to be putting pressure on the Zoo every step of the way. It is very difficult to safely get to the late game as a Zoo Warlock, especially when you're forced to life tap to have card advantage. You're sacrificing your own health total.
Yep, it is pretty annoying to see that the board state from Kolento is actually now so powerful with just the 1/1 upgrade from the Kalisef, because otherwise he would have just opted to play the Tower Creeper this turn instead of the Demon. But because of the fact that the Vilespan Slayer has an upgraded attack, so it can just trade up with the hero power or the 1/1 on the board already, makes the Tower Creeper obsolete on this board.
Yep, absolutely correct. With just a Crystal Weaver to challenge, this is a very weak turn from Mitsuhide, and Kolento will even be able to start pushing some damage here. Going into Bone Mare on turn 7, potentially even just finish out the game on turn 8, then with that Cold Blood and whatever Kolento picks up off the top.
He also has Leroy Jenkins in his deck available, so that's always a possibility of just drawing. Like, he has two outs that are giving him even more potential damage, which is the second Cold Blood and Leroy Jenkins. So it's a very explosive deck, and just kill you outright when you don't suspect it. While Mitsuhide's deck, the problem is that he has access to, an example, Doom Guards, and they're super powerful with the Gul'dan. But as I said before, he is not even at turn 10, and he's looking for a survival option first, than just to be, in a winning position with the Gul'dan.
Okay, so just taking a look at Mitsuhide's Warlock, he's actually running a little bit of a lower curved build. There's no Blood Reaver Gul'dan at the top end.
Oh, really?
He has a copy of Cairn, he has 2 copies of Darkshire Councilman, and 1 copy of Glacial Shard. So looking to maybe fight a little bit more effectively in the early game, but sacrificing that one big late game swing against control decks by not running Blood Reaver.
That's interesting, because that's one of the cards that can actually help with aggro matchups as well, right?
Yeah, it can. If you can get there safely, then you have Siphon Life every turn. That can swing a game against an aggro deck that maybe runs out of resources or is just looking for one final damage push top deck.
In this case, of course, the cooldown is not really that useful since Mitsuhide actually lost the early game, and that was the problem because of the fact that KSF was played for Kolento, it wasn't played for Mitsuhide, so that was just giving him so much speed basically every single turn. But now we can see that Kolento is actually in a really odd spot. He has access to good trades this turn. The Bronner can kill the Attack Reaper, the Chain Gang. One of the Chain Gangs will be killed by the Vilespine Slayer, but he's not pushing any damage this turn. So if Mitsuhide will have access to good trades next turn, and that can happen with Bonarmer and with just the second Chain Gang on board, which can kill the Bonarmer for Kolento, that might actually give Mitsuhide the time to breathe and stabilize.
Yeah, this actually could just be the big swing that Mitsuhide needed. He had a turn that was defensive enough, and Kolento's hand, fortunately for Mitsuhide, is very aggressive, but not good at stabilizing a board presence. Cold Bloods are fine for pushing damage, but if you have nothing to put them on, then you can't actually deal those final few points, which is likely why Kolento's running not only Leroy, but 2 copies of Argent Commander, and still there's 1 more copy of Southsea Deckhand. So there are quite a few charge options left in deck, but Mitsuhide now has a little bit of breathing room with the Bone Mare that he can play this turn.
Alright, well, this is a really interesting turn. Good decision by Kolento not to give the additional damage on the Bonmer, because now Mitsuhide is not able to make the good trades. Very good decision by Kolento. At the same time, not really surprising by the level of player that Kolento represents.
Yeah, you would absolutely expect Kolento to just be playing correctly. I mean, with all of these players, all 16 of these players are highly, highly talented.
Well, Mitsuhide is the champion of the Seed Story Cup as well, which is a pretty big feat when you ask me, since it's a big tournament where almost every single player actually kind of tryhards, even with a more relaxed atmosphere in that tournament. But at the same time, it's perceived as one of those most important community events. So Mitsuhide...
It's a tournament that even though it's a little bit more relaxed in nature and everybody's just having a good time, it's still a really fantastic field of players, and everybody wants to go in and still do their best.
So is that lethal? That should be lethal.
That's got to be it. One of these minions gets through.
I think that was lethal even without the Argent Commander.
Yeah. Mitsuhide sees it. It looked like he may have had a little bit of breathing room there, but unfortunately even the Bone Mare was not enough. Kolento going to take care of it.
Alright, next game, Mitsuhide versus Kolento. Kolento did pick his Warlock, while Mitsuhide did switch to his Jade Druid. At least I anticipated it's a Jade Druid.
Yep. They both have brought Jade Druids to the event, but we're going to see Kolento now on his Zoo Warlock build, which is just slightly different than what Mitsuhide has, but still operating certainly under the same intention. Swarm the board very quickly, Keleseth on 2 if you can, and Kolento can. He's actually just going to full keep this.
Well, not really surprised about the fact that he kept the Keleseth in his hand. I was surprised a little bit about the Doomguard, but at the same time, the Doomguard is a fantastic creature, even if it's, discarding 2 cards against the Druid player, because it has so much HP. It's such a problem to deal with, right? 7 HP.
Yeah, I mean...
How do you kill that minion?
I mean, unless you're Stansifka running Naturalized, Doomguard is very difficult for Jade Druid to remove. And I get why Kolento kept this. Looking at just the 4 cards that he did keep, he has a 1, 2, 3, coin 5 curve. So neglecting anything that he draws, even just what he started with, is still fantastic. He can, of course, deviate depending on what he picks up, but he had a nice solid curve. Might as well go ahead and keep it.
I wouldn't be surprised if he actually just goes for the Keleseth on turn 2. On turn 1 with the coin.
Might as well get all of the value out of it that you possibly can. Kolento picks up a minion next turn, he'd like it to
Yeah.
be buffed. So he is going to be deviating from his plan, but Doomguard eventually will come down onto the board and will make an impact regardless of when it happens.
When you think about it, having a buff on an additional card is worth 2 mana, basically. And virtual card advantage, right? So changing that coin for the buff already, which is important against druids in general, might be worth more than coining out a Doomguard on turn 4 or just having the coin as a discard feeder on turn 5 for that Doomguard. So in the long term, I believe it's actually worth a lot, especially since if the druid player has to play Wildgrowth on turn 2, then Kaletsev cannot be killed. So that gives some more chip damage, right? And that's fantastic.
Yeah, anything that the Warlock can get away with in the early game is valuable. Every point of damage can matter ultimately, especially when you are going up against a deck like Jade Druid, which does have some incremental means of healing. You have Malfurion the Pestilent, you have 2 copies of Ultimate Infestation. So likely the 30-point life total that they start with is not going to be all the life that they have. So the Warlock will need to find additional damage somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, look at that. The patches is actually not that bad. 1 mana, 2/2 with charge, that's okay.
It's like an Enchanted Raven with charge plus Pirate. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's definitely not terrible.
Also, discarding the patches is pretty okay. So you're not too upset about this one.
Now, every single minion that Kolento is going to play is really tough for Mitsuhide to deal with. Even a 1/1 minion suddenly becomes a problem because it cannot be killed by a swipe AoE effect, it cannot be killed by a cycle of the Wrath, and that makes a huge difference. Oh, we have updates as well on the ticker in the right lower corner. Group D loses match. Stancivka 3-0 Tars.
Oh wow, that
so
was
if
fast.
I'm not mistaken, Tars...
That means Tars is out of the tournament.
Yes, first of all, Tars is out of the tournament, and I also believe that he lost 2 matches 0-3. Let me check.
Let me double
No,
check.
sorry. The first match was versus Neria, and it was actually 3-2 for Neria. So it was a close one.
Okay, but with that second match blowout, yep, Tars is going to be out of the tournament already. And Tars actually is a French Hearthstone player, but he currently lives in Spain.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Did not know that.
Yeah, he was at DreamHack Denver and Montreal as well.
Did he say why did he move to Spain?
He did not, but we went to a Mexican restaurant and he didn't understand anything on the menu. So I don't believe he speaks Spanish. He just currently lives in Spain for some reason.
Isn't he Mexican? Never mind, stupid joke. Anyway, let's get back to the match.
Spreading Plague is backbreaking, but it does look like Kolento has the power to be able to get through it.
I mean, the Despicable Dreadlord is like holy moly powerful in this situation. Look at that. Dealing 5 damage this turn just by playing Despicable Dreadlord, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Just 1 Spreading Plague will be left alive after this, and still a vast array of minions will be left on the board for Kolento, while Mitsuhide, with his hand, is really not looking at any good answers to that.
Mitsuhide just did not have his own board presence in the early game. Jade Druid, of course, needs to take those early turns to ramp and then get the payoff later on. But when you need to sacrifice your early development for mana ramp, and then you sacrifice straight up minion development for Jade ramp, Zoo is just going to blow you out most of the time. It's a really poor matchup for the Druid.
Historically speaking, Zoo was always amazing against Druids, right? Apart from the one Druid that was an outcome to a bug in the game, if you remember the Explosive Sheep and... what was it called? Explosive Sheep and the transformation card for Druid that I already forgot what it was named for. But it was allowing the Druid to swipe the entire board with that combination. That was the only time when Druid actually had an advantage against Zoo decks. But in general, zoo decks are primarily built to punish decks, exactly punish decks like Druid.
Especially since Druid
Poison Seeds.
did
Thank you very
suffer
much,
a little
chat.
bit from...
Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, Poison Seeds. Shoot, you're right. Poison Seeds destroys the sheep, and then the sheep destroys everything. I forgot about that.
That was one of my favorite decks, actually. I'm pretty sad that it got, changed. All right, there we have it. Doom God discarding 2 cards, getting even that Soulfire. Of course, it's not. Oh my god.
Kaliseth by itself. So to want to play a deck that has no 2-drops, one, it needs to be a very specific kind of deck, and Prince Kaliseth needs to be really, really, really good in that meta. Before the balance changes, it just wasn't quite there, but post-balance changes, fantastic.
Agree, as someone would say from Eastern Europe, like myself. Anyway, update on some matches, if I'm not mistaken. RDU versus Evangelion, 3-1 for RDU. That means that RDU is already through the group, if I believe. That means Evangelion is going down to the lower bracket. Thomas, holy moly, Thomas actually won against Thais in the first match, and now he won against Jackie Chan, 3-1.
Oh, wow. Okay, so Thomas is moving on to the top 8.
And Espomido won against Neria 3-0.
And Espomido moving on as well. All right, those are not 2 of the first names that I would have expected to make it to the top 8, but I love a good underdog story, Lothar. I love seeing some players that you wouldn't expect go up against Titans of Hearthstone and come out on top.
Exactly. All right, now we're going to jump to the third game between Mitsuhide and Kolento. This time we had seen a small switch-up between the decks. They kind of exchanged between them. Although, Mitsuhide did took out the Blood River Gul'dan Prevent. But I have to say, Kolento has a way more explosive opening hand than Mitsuhide had as a Druid. Wild Growth on turn 2, which is always fantastic, always something that you want to have as a Druid, while still maintaining a tempo play on turn 1, and a turn 4 with the Jade Spirit is absolutely bonkers. So if he has a decent turn 5, he has amazing follow-ups in the upcoming turns.
This is exactly what Jade Druid needs to be able to keep up with Zoo.
Yep.
And Mitsuhide's build, it's a little bit different than Kolento's, not enough that I think the lack of Blood River Gul'dan will actually matter, because likely if the Zoo gets to turn 10 and isn't in a position where it is ahead on board or can just win the game reasonably, then the Druid probably has already won the game. So these first few turns are really where it matters for Mitsuhide. Can he take the board decisively, or is Kolento going to be able to prevent that board push, to get his own mana so far ahead of Mitsuhide's that he makes up for the early minion presence that the Zoo has?
And look at that. The swipe is not ideal, but it deals with the captain, which is fine, I would say, because then still the only problem would be a Mortal Coil from Mitsuhide or a Despicable Dreadnought that would have to be played with the coin. So that's not that big of a deal, because you know that your opponent's going to play a 4 or 5 minion on the board while you still have a decent follow-up next turn with an example, Aya, right? Which doesn't really matter that much for her and the Jade Golem, that the 1 damage will be dealt at the end of the turn.
Yeah, Kolento knows that at the very best for Mitsuhide, it's going to be Despicable Dreadlord, and Kolento can challenge that on board with Aya, and even just be ahead on board this turn with the follow-up for Jade Behemoth, and then with the Mire Keeper to ramp into Ultimate Infestation. So Kolento's game plan is completely set, and it is looking fantastic. Mitsuhide just doesn't have the power in hand, I think, to be able to overcome what Kolento has.
Well, this looks, we can't really anticipate what happened. We couldn't, with 100% confidence to say what happened last turn with Kolento, but I think he actually kind of baited out that Despicable Dreadnought with that play. And in this case, he has a good trade in most situations with his Aya on that Despicable Dreadnought, and that's an amazing play if that was actually the game plan.
Well, Glacial Shard going to get some decent use here. One copy in the deck for Mitsuhide. A rather unusual tech choice, but it is going to slow down
Yeah,
Kolento.
that's a big difference. Because the Tar Creeper would be good enough on its own to trade with Aya, but the problem is that still the Jade Golem would be able to trade up with something else. In this case, the
Lothar, this Nourish is sick.
in this case, though, that Glacier Shard actually gives you so much tempo gain that might be backbreaking for Kolento. But now with that Nourish draw, that's actually a game changer.
Yeah, if I'm Kolento, I'm nourishing for mana, playing that Mire Keeper with a 2/2 alongside it, and I'm playing Ultimate Infestation next turn. You get the direct kill on the Despicable Dreadlord. Aya's going to be unfrozen. You get the 5/5 on board. I mean, this is crazy.
And it's only 6, 8, 9 damage on board, so that's not really good enough to kill Kolento this next turn.
Now, even with Mitsuhide has a copy of Cairn, so that would probably be his best draw off the top. But Bone Mare wouldn't be able to be played for another turn, and that is the top of the curve. Really, really dependent for Mitsuhide on the early turns from this deck, even more so than other Zoo builds, because he doesn't have that panic button of Blood Reaver Gul'dan if he's able to make it to 10.
All right, well, this is the important moment for Mitsuhide. He needs to consolidate his board right now, and he needs to calculate how much tempo can he lose and how much tempo can he gain from the Despicable Dreadlord, and if it's worth it. Because he knows what's going to happen next turn, right? And Nourish on that turn just says next turn is Ultimate Infestation. So by knowing that, he can adjust accordingly to his game plan, but the problem is the cards that he has in his hand are actually not that impactful. So he is not really in a good position right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can try to minimize the impact of the Ultimate Infestation, knowing that it's absolutely coming on turn 10 for Kolento, but even still, the card is still going to be phenomenal. It's still going to swing the board. It's still going to draw Kolento 5 cards, which means that Mitsuhide's natural hero advantage is, ineffective, because Kolento will just have more cards over the entirety of the rest of the game. So even though Mitsuhide now has board control, Kolento is going to swing this with Ultimate Infestation. He's going to have resource advantage. He's going to have a minor board advantage. I just don't think there's a way for Mitsuhide to come back from this one.
Well, the most powerful turn for Mitsuhide right now will be Bone from the top of the deck, right? That gives him a swing of 8, 9, 10 potential damage, but it's still not good enough to actually do something from those upcoming turns when Kolento can't just stabilize with any taunt minion. Kun even, right? Kun would be fantastic just to give him armor in this case, because he just buys time until he is able to play a huge minion that just does something with the board. That's about it. Look at that. Kun with a taunt minion. That is a huge swing for the upcoming turn while having 2 additional golems. Man. It's insane when you think about it. Yeah, Mitsuhide knows what's up. He already conceded and put out his earbuds. So that it is. That's it. Kolento takes the match 3-0 in a really aggressive fashion, I would say.